Hi, my name is Robin Wong and this is the Olympus EM1 Mark II. I want to talk about how good or how bad the dynamic range is in this camera. I'm at the Batu Caves, Kuala Lumpur. It's such a beautiful location. The weather is beautiful today, so let's do this. A lot of people are complaining that the dynamic range on the Olympus OMD cameras are not good enough because the sensor size used, the Micro Four Thirds sensor, is not really as good as full frame or APS-C cameras. I'm not denying that full frame cameras will surely have better dynamic range because of the larger sensor size. It's just physics. But the big question here is the Micro Four Thirds sensor in the Olympus OMD cameras, such as the EM1 Mark II. Is it sufficient? Is the dynamic range good enough in even the most challenging and demanding situation? That's what we want to find out in this video. All the photographs are shot in RAW and ISO 200 to maximize dynamic range, and I'll show you how I further recover the details in the highlight and shadow region through my post-processing workflow. This is just a mild case. So we'll drag the highlight, toning down so that it reveals some details in the sky, increasing the shadows so we'll reveal the darker areas. So now we have a sort of like a pseudo HDR result, increasing contrast, reducing the brightness a little bit, inspecting the details and sharpness. Oh, the Olympus 12-100 lens is incredibly sharp. The details are quite amazing. All right. That's pretty much it for this photograph. Now see before adjustment and after. This is just a minor tweak, nothing to shout about. This is a good situation to push the dynamic range of the image. There is a lot of shadow happening in the foreground where the bushes and the trees are at, versus the landscape that is far away and the sky which is overblown in white. So let's see how well the camera balances this situation. Now this is a more severe case. There's darker region here. It is a bright sky. We want to balance them off. As usual, we tone down the highlights, review the detail in the sky, we increase the shadows so that the shadow region will be a little bit brighter, increase the contrast, reduce the shadow, and you'll see that immediately before and after adjustment there is a huge difference. The main reason why I wanted to shoot in this cave, it is basically the perfect location to test dynamic range. A lot of situations there's plenty of highlights and shadows within a frame, and it can't get any worse than the light shining through any openings or holes from the ceiling into a dark cave. The big difference between the shadow and the bright sky makes it the best ground to actually torture any camera if you want to see how the dynamic range performs. If your camera can survive in this environment, trust me, it will definitely survive and do well in any other shooting scenarios. This is the worst possible dynamic range situation that anyone can encounter, a dark cave versus the bright sky. I think this is the most severe case that we have today. As usual, we tone down the highlights. Immediately, we see some details in the clouds and the sky. You see the difference before and after the highlight adjustment. Then, of course, we drag the shadow all the way to reveal the information in the shadow area. Huge, huge difference. Just by sliding the shadow and highlight adjustments, we can have a massive improvement already. The inner cave walls look really beautiful, a lot of texture, a lot of bright and dark areas. Another good situation to test dynamic range. In this case, I want to start off by adjusting the white balance. I like my images a bit warmer. Tone out the highlights, increase the shadow. Immediately you see the big difference before and after adjustment. It is much more balanced. This is how the cave looks like inside. There is a temple for Indian Hindu worship built right inside the cave, which is pretty fantastic. I am now right inside the Batu Caves. Here are some tips to help you to maximize the dynamic range in your OMD cameras. Do not over or underexpose your shots. Never overdo it. If you severely underexpose your shots, they will lead to clippings in the shadow region. If you overexpose your shots too much, then your images will be burned out, especially in the highlight regions. You may slightly underexpose to protect the highlights or slightly overexpose to reveal some details in the shadow region, but make sure that you don't overdo it. Then the dynamic range captured in your images should be well balanced and it should be fine in most shooting environment. This is yet another super challenging one. As usual, first we reduce the highlight, then we increase the shadow, then we further increase the exposure to bring up the shadow details. You see it's a lot brighter now, especially the shadow area. We see a lot more detail and we don't get degradation much. Pretty much the fine details are still intact. Now I want to get rid of the purple fringing here. Because I'm shooting wide open, it's quite easy. Just find that purple color, pick it up from the eyedropper. Then we reduce that purple color by dragging down the saturation slider. There, easy fix for any purple fringing. I hope you love that tip that I've just shared. And pretty much you can see it before and after. There's a massive difference that you make just by adjusting a few sliders. Remember guys, it is very important to shoot in RAW. You can only do this in RAW. You cannot adjust this in JPEG. And of course, ISO 200. Here are some really severely backlit situations. Let's see how the OMD camera balances this. This is another really challenging one. Of course, we reduce the highlight, but I want to play with the exposure. I increase it a lot here. Then of course, then increase the shadows. Now you can see that we have opened up a lot of details which was actually all just dark before the adjustment. Increasing the contrast and brightness. Look at the massive difference before and after edit. And the details in the shadow region is still very clean. I hope you have enjoyed watching this video and I hope you have learned some useful tips on how to get the best of dynamic range from your Olympus OMD cameras. And I hope I've successfully proven to you that the EM1 Mark II, any Micro Four Thirds camera, any Olympus OMD camera is definitely more than sufficient to deliver a fantastic balanced dynamic range even in the most challenging environment. I think it is also crucial not to worry too much about the technicalities of your photograph and have faith that your camera can deliver fantastic results. All you have to do is just focus more on the photograph that you're taking and the story that you're telling through your images. Any cameras today, Olympus or any other brands, can deliver wonderful results. If you have liked this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing to this channel. This is the last video for 2019. Happy New Year 2020. I will see you again next year. Remember to go out and take more photographs. Bye-bye.